And in the spinal cord, we're going to use this one. Yeah, we don't use the big one anymore. That's good though. And this is a cervical vertebra. So actually, if you take my head and you go like that, the back is here, and the front is here. It's in the neck. Because you see these holes on the side, that means there's the vertebral artery going in and out of these holes. So you know it's in the neck. But we're actually interested in this structure right in here for the most part. That's the spinal cord. We have a little small black dot here. That's known as the central canal. That is actually the continuation of these chambers. And on the bottom, after the fourth ventricle, it just goes down it goes down the central canal in the center there. So that's what that is. Then I want to take this inside here, and what we have is a darker butterfly sort of resembling structure on the inside with multiple different horns, so to speak, areas. We have one here on each side that's in the back. That's known as the posterior horn, or the dorsal horn. And then we got one that's on the front, and that's known as the anterior horn, also known as the ventral horn. In neurology, they still use ventral and dorsal a lot, which means the anterior posterior. And we actually have a lateral horn here, which we don't test. But generally speaking, the posterior horn has to do with sensory stuff, the anterior horn with motor stuff, and the lateral horn with autonomic stuff. The autonomic nervous system. Then we focus on the little yellow nervelets that go in and out of the spinal cord. We got some that go out actually in the front, and those are anterior or ventral roots. So the roots come straight out of the cord, like the root in the tree. The ones in the back are actually going in, because the front are motor fibers and the posterior, the back part, are sensory fibers. So the back are the posterior roots or the dorsal roots. And then we go lateral, and when we go lateral, we have one of those root structures. If you follow the posterior root, actually, we have a bulge. We get a little bulge. And that's known as the dorsal root ganglion, or the DRG. And the structure that's around that, actually, or that is, on the other side, it's not open, it's closed. So you see that's like a one structure. It's not roots anymore. It's just one nerve with both of them inside, and that's the spinal nerve. So if you see the roots, you know they're roots. If they come together and they form one structure, that's when we have the spinal nerve. And then they split right again after they leave the spinal cord, or the top. Because some of these nerves go to the front, some of these nerves go to the back. But that's for the spinal nerves. And then we get us to the eye. That's a good one. And in the eye, we have the sclera, which is the white, the eye on the white. We have the cornea, which is the clear in the front. So that's the outer layer, the outermost layer. Then we have muscles on the outer layer that anchor into the sclera. We have four muscles that are straight, one on top, one on the outside, one on the inside, one on the bottom. Why do I know this is the outside? Because there is a gland here. That gland is always on the outside. That's the cry gland, the tear duct gland, the lacrimal gland. So that you know that's always on the outside. So therefore then you know this here is the outside muscle. So that's the lateral rectus. The one on the opposite side is the medial rectus. And the one on top is the superior, and the one on the bottom is the inferior rectus. That makes sense. But then we got a couple of goofy muscles. We got one that you can't really see in red because all you show is a tendon that goes into the eyeball. And that's a superior oblique muscle. And then we got one last one, and that's on the outside. That's up and down. It's not straight. I mean, it's straight, but it's straight up and down. It's not horizontal, it's vertical. And that's known as the inferior oblique muscle. And now look at that. I'm not really doing too much more. I'm going to have the structure that meets the eyeball. That's the optic nerve. And hopefully, if I open it up, there's a lens on the inside. Look at that. And then I'll delete that. Oops. And then here we got the lens. So that will be just laying there, but it will be laying there with an eyeball, so you're not going to think, what's this? Oh yeah, magnifying lens. I got to read something in. And that brings me to the ear. And we got an ear right here. And in the ear, I want to know the auricle. And that's this thing. Your teacher pulls you up in the ear, it's the auricle. They don't do that anymore. Yeah, they don't. And then what we have from the auricle, we have an outside ear canal. That's like you stick your finger in the ear, don't you? But that's the external auditory meatus. And then we get onto a membrane, and that's the tympanic membrane, the eardrum. And then we open it up. And when we open it up, we can take this little thing out. And that's actually carved out of bone. But what we have there, we have the round structure that looks like a snail, and that's the cochlea. And then we got 3 circles that sort of are on different planes, and those are known as the semicircular canals. Where are my lungs went? Let me get a long model, not the nicest one, but it's got all the parts. But it falls apart. So here's the long model. You see the nice the lungs and the heart in between. We're going to take that thing apart. So we're going to take the lungs off, we're going to take the heart away, and you're probably going to have it laying there more like that. I'll put the pieces to the side. I mean, the heart might not be there. When we look at that thing there, we have a larynx, and you can't really see the larynx. I mean, you can see the larynx. We can't really see the pharynx. I was going to talk about the pharynx first. The pharynx is the tube that carries both water and liquid and air, and that's above here until we hit sort of that structure that opens up and is right behind the hyoid, and it opens up into an air tube and into a food tube. The food tube goes down the back, the air tube goes down the front. The air tube is known as the trachea. That's whenever you see these ring things, this blue stuff, those are cartilage rings that keep the trachea open. Because the air is not a strong push tube open. So it's got to be an open tube that lets the air go in and out. You see that when you look at the dryer. The dryer things, the hose, they have wires around so they stay open. It's the same concept, I mean, at the end of the day. The larynx is the voice box. So actually the larynx is what I'm taking off right now. So that's where we make the voice. Remember that big model that I had? I don't ask too many structures on that. I just have that big model. So we do the larynx on here. Then once we go to the trachea, and we have the trachea split in the left and right, at that point we call it the bronchus. We have one on the left, one on the right. Bronchi, that's plural. And then from there they split further and further and further. We got a whole bunch of bronchial tree until they go into air sacs, and then there we have the gas exchange. We look at the lung lobes, the lungs themselves as lobes. The right lung has 3 lobes, and the left lung has 2 lobes because the heart's over there. So it's a little bit more crowded. We have fissures that separate the lobes. Fissures again are deep grooves. And you can see here On the right side, the fissures are right here, and then down in here. One of them is a horizontal fissure that goes horizontal, and the other, that side to side. And the other one is more like an angle, diagonal, and that's known as the oblique fissure. That's on the right side. That gives us a superior, a middle, and an inferior lobe on the right side. On the left side, we have only 2 lobes. That gives us only 1 fissure. On there, we only have an oblique fissure. Left side, only oblique fissure. And that gives us a superior lobe and an inferior lobe. And that gets me to the digestion. And so, from the digestion tract, I think we pick it up pretty much up here when we split the pharynx and we get into a food tube. And the food tube is the esophagus, the gullet. That's a muscular tube that goes behind the tracheal part and then pierces the diaphragm and it enters into the stomach, which is right here. That's the stomach. We have different parts of the stomach, but for the end of the exam, we're not worried about the different parts. Then from the stomach, we get to the small intestine. The first part of the small intestine is known as the duodenum, right here, the 12-finger gut. That one I want you to know. I took ileum and jejunum out because who knows which one's which. I mean, you could go trace the coloring, but you know, that's not anatomy, that's just tracing coloring. And so I'm not worried about that. But what I do have there is I have the appendix. And the appendix is the pouch that sticks down right by the cecum, which is the first part of the colon. The cecum is not there though, but the appendix is as a term. And then from there we have an ascending colon, a transverse colon, and a descending colon. Getting into a sigmoid colon, which is when it turns around in the bottom, it makes this bottom curve. And then it turns around and goes up and down again, and that's our rectum. And then you poop it out. Sigmoid is down here where it makes the curve. So it's not as clear as where the sigmoid starts and where the last part of the descending colon finishes. So if I do it, I tag it very clear. It's either, when it's here, it's the rectum. When it's here, it's the sigmoid colon. Here's the descent. And if you've got questions, you call me over. And that will be just fine. Then we have the liver. And on the liver, I'm basically tagging right and left lobe. We're not going to worry about that too much more than that. We know we have multiple lobes to the liver. When we have multiple lobes to something, it gets interesting and helpful when it's pathology. Because like in a lungs, we can often take a little segment out. So not even have to take a whole lobe out. We just have even further walled off little parts. So generally a lobe, it's a walled off part. So it's, if something happens in one end, it doesn't have to be happening in the other end either. So that's kind of helpful. And so we have 4 lobes to the liver. We have the quadrate, the caudate, those are small lobes in the back, and then we go to the right and left. That's the most prominent. And then lastly, we have the pancreas. And here's the pancreas right underneath the stomach that feeds into the duodenum or duodenum.